When are we going to land?
I don't know. I never know.
Why not?
I have no control over where I land. Neither can I...
Pull to open.
Pull to open?
Yes, and what do you do?
I think they're somewhat suspicious of us.
Yeah, I wonder why.
Well, I wouldn't worry too much about that, my dear, because I don't think we're going to be here long enough to find that out.
You wait and see, Thorbound.
And where are you taking me? Huh?
Here come the drums!
Hello, and welcome to Pull to Open, an ongoing quest to watch all of Doctor Who, the entire television serial in random order. I'm Pete Paschal.
And I'm Chris Taylor, and we are a couple of Doctor Who fans, journalists, guys who love to talk about the show and have been on this quest for some years now with our trusty built-in randomizer. And our randomizer's taken us to some interesting choices recently. One might almost think that the randomizer is trying to throw us off the quest. With some of its choices, including our latest one. So, Pete, you want to give us a recap of where we have been up until this point?
I'd love to give a recap of all these interesting episodes. And by interesting, well, I'll ask ChatGPT at some point to find some different adjectives. But you could probably figure them out yourself anyway. Previously, on Pull to Open, 3 episodes ago, we were at the 4th Doctor adventure with the Daleks. No, not Genesis of the Daleks. It was Destiny of the Daleks. Yep, the one with the Movellans and a guy with an orange rope. And, well, Davros with some cobwebs on his face that disappear after a very short period of time. From there, we jump back in our TARDIS, and it took us to the new series, a very recent episode by the name of Orphan 55, which had some lessons learned for the audience, for the podcast, for everyone exposed to anything that touches Orphan 55. We've learned many things about what Doctor Who is and what it should not be.
Yes, we definitely got a Professor Hater rating for that episode. That's one of our ratings in the rating system for Pull to Open. Yes, and I'd be surprised if we get any other, a lot of dispute over that. So, yeah.
So we decided to...
some relief after that.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we decided to abandon that orphan and try for something different. And we got something different. Rewinding back to the Peter Capaldi era for the memorable episode, Kill the Moon. In which case...
I'm just realizing...
It's very notable for killing the moon.
That creature that is revealed to be inside the moon at the end of Kill the Moon is an orphan.
Oh, that's true.
The Doctor,
there's the connection.
During the podcast, I didn't catch this, but the Doctor does explicitly say that this creature is the only one of its kind in the universe, which I don't know how he knew that, but he says that, so it is an orphan, and that's part of the reason why it's bad to kill it, I guess.
You know, the Doctor just magically knows things sometimes. You just got to go with it. Or not. Because we decided to leave it.
The Doctor lies.
And jump in again, activate our randomizer, and we have been brought all the way back to Season 4, Serial 1, The Smugglers.
That's right, The Smugglers, which has been mentioned before in the show. I don't know if you remember, Pete, but I accidentally at one point when we were talking about the gunfighters and the Celestial Toymaker, Celestial Toymaker goes into the Savages, and I mistakenly said Smugglers. I wonder if the randomizer is punishing me for that slip of the tongue, or if there's something else going on here. But yes, we're here at The Smugglers, our first completely missing story.
Yeah, it's incredibly missing. There is virtually nothing surviving in terms of footage from this particular story. Strangely enough, it is one of the 2 stories that is going to be animated later this year, I'm told. So for a while there, it looked like there weren't going to be any more animated reconstructions of missing episodes. And apparently they secured some funding, the people that generally do these animations. So they decided to animate 2 of the missing episodes that are still don't have versions of them. And one is the Underwater Menace from the second Doctor era. And this one, the Smugglers,
Yes.
which
choice.
is, yeah, it's a choice, and I can see why. Like, it's the first story of season 4, a very notable season, obviously, for regenerating the Doctor into Patrick Troughton. Has the Daleks and Ben and Polly. So there's stuff here. It's also one of the last. It's not the last, but it's one of the last pure historical episodes.
That's right.
So
it gets overlooked a lot by Doctor Who fans for a number of reasons. It's the penultimate Hartnell, so it's not like the last Hartnell. We all think of the 10th Planet, where we've been on this adventure already. It's not really the first Ben and Polly adventure because they appear in the War Machines. So it's not really the last historical because we have the Highlanders next. So it's like a lot of sort of penultimate things, but not quite the last. And of course, a lot of people have not bothered to sit through the telesnaps or read the Terrence Dicks adaptation that came out in 1988. When they sort of run out of other stories to novelize. It's you might say that it is the most forgotten Doctor Who story ever.
Yeah, that's definitely arguable. I would definitely say it was not forgotten by some people making the new series, which we'll get to later. So it has some interesting connections that beyond just what it follows, which is the War Machines and what it goes into, the 10th Planet. Smugglers is surprisingly influential for reasons both on screen and off. We'll get to all of it, but before we get to that, guys, I want to just note for everyone listening, if you want to cut to our commentary on the Smugglers, you can go check the show notes right now. There will be a prominent note on the exact time we're going to start with our TLDW, and in the commentary, if you want to skip over what we like to call the pull to open feedback loop, where we like to keep the conversation going with our fans. We like to talk to you guys on social media. We like to highlight some of that conversation here. And we also really, really love it when you guys review the show. So as everyone knows, podcasts really thrive on reviews. The more reviews we get in the Apple Podcast app in particular, the more visible the show will be to other people who are interested in cool commentary on Doctor Who. So please, if you haven't already, go to the Apple Podcast app or whatever app you're in and rate or review the show. It really does help and help us connect with you guys and have more fans connect with each other. It's really, really a great thing to do. And when you do leave a review, we also sometimes like to read those out on the podcast, particularly if you leave our signature element now, which is the emoji title in the form of a review. Basically, if you take a Doctor Who title, a story title, and put it in emojis, we love that. So leave that anywhere, but reviews in particular is a good place to do it. And we've got some this week. So we have a great fan by the name of Rowan with the handle X_Cinematech. Nice handle.
Okay.
And Rowan has left us a couple of emoji titles. So this inspires, of course, probably our favorite game show-like segment, which is Guess the Title. And as ever, Chris is our contestant, our only contestant.
Oh, man.
We got to get some more guests on here so we can spread around the pain.
Yeah, please save me from the emoji titles. No, I love it. I love it, especially when you can stump me, which is not that hard.
So Rowan actually left a number of them. So to pace them out, we're only going to do 2 this week. So these ones are good. The second one took me a couple minutes, but I think you know I've got some confidence in you this time, Chris. I think you're gonna get this. So are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
First,
As
dead
I'll
air
ever be.
for a second there. You were deciding. All right. First,
Can I say no?
first emoji title has 4 emojis.
Okay.
First emoji, doctor, male doctor.
Yes. Okay.
Second emoji, question mark.
Okay. I think that part's easy.
Third emoji, television screen.
Mm-hmm.
Fourth emoji, film reel projector.
Well, that's okay. So it's obviously Doctor Who.
Think you got that?
In Exciting Adventure with the Daleks. No, Doctor Who TV movie. It's got to be. Yes.
There it is. Doctor Who, the TV movie.
TV movie. The
Nice.
Beatles' White Album of Doctor Who. At least in.
I like that they, and I think that is the official title, as far or the movie, as opposed to sometimes people call it The Enemy Within, which is just kind of like it's a kind of a Doctor Who-ish title, but
it's a very classic series title.
Yeah.
Sure,
So I think
absolutely sure that isn't the name of a Hartnell episode.
I think it's actually an episode title of Star Trek, the original series. That's also another reason not to like it. So Doctor Who, the TV movie, I think it's clear. Everyone knows what you're talking about. Boom.
All right, easy one.
Speaking.
Thanks for warming me up.
All right. Second one. You ready, sir?
As I'll ever be.
2 emojis. First emoji, explosion.
Okay.
Second emoji, a bunch of houses all together in a road. So kind of like a
God.
dwelling, hamlet, village.
The explosion of the city. I don't know. This is giving me Flux vibes with Dan's house being destroyed. I wonder if that's got anything to do with it. But it's probably not referencing the content of a story. It's probably referencing the title, the dead city, the exploding city, the village of the damned, village of the angels.
Can I give you a hint?
Yes, please.
What is the noise an explosion makes? if you would see it like, sorry, what was that?
Boom. Boom. Boomtown. Wow. Oh, thank you.
You got it. You got it.
I'm so lucky that I have made the point in several podcasts past that the Doctor actually likes it when things go boom.
That's true.
That is definitely
especially the
Doctor
first
feature.
Doctor.
I yes,
guys.
As we'll get into.
This is super fun. We'll pace out the other emoji titles in future episodes. You too can have your emoji titles, of course, read out on the podcast. Simply leave a review in the Apple Podcasts app or drop us a line on social media. Pull to Open 63 on Twitter and Instagram, or Pull to Open, all one word, on TikTok. Hey, another great place you can interact with the show is, of course, Spotify. Spotify listeners, you can rate the show on your mobile app. So fire it up on your phone. Go ahead and give us a star rating. We're not telling you what to rate, but for some reason, I'm seeing 5 lights in front of me. Just like Picard in that one episode of Star Trek.
There are 5
but
lights.
Exactly.
5 stars. Yes.
So every week, as everyone knows, Chris and I give a rating to the story that we talk about, and you too can also give a rating just by listening on Spotify. Go to the episode page in your app. Tell us if you thought it was a Dalek, an Ogron, Viscount Banger. We'll explain all of those at the end of the show. And stay tuned to the end of the podcast for a full explanation of those ratings. So, but right now we have the results from Orphan 55. And I am somewhat reassured to hear that most folks were in agreement with us, with a whopping majority, 67% of the listening public did not enjoy, basically called it an Ogron.
Yep.
So there it is. We had 25%. Yeah. 25% on the Professor Hater. And actually, a few people called it a fixed point in time, though. I guess there was enough people who seemed to enjoy what was going on, or probably feel bad about enjoying it, I guess. A fixed point in time, of course, is the rating that we give for something that is kind of beyond a rating, right?
Yeah. We introduced
meaningful
it 3
to you for some
episodes
reason.
ago for Destiny of the Daleks, specifically because I could not could not give it a rating. It was so foundational to my fandom. The first full story I remember watching in 1979 there, and wow, I guess there are younger fans who may have grown up on Jodie's series or just come to it in recent years, and this just may be something special for them, or maybe it's the climate change aspect of Orphan 55. Like, I can see how it might be hard to denigrate it if you really believe, as we all do, that climate change is a serious problem, must be tackled in fiction somehow. Maybe you're prepared to overlook the after-school special aspects of Orphan 55. At least,
you know what I think it is.
Yep.
I think it's not younger viewers; it's older ones, and they really, really like the Graham Speedos joke.
Yeah, everyone's identifying.
Totally get it.
Or maybe, if you've ever had a vending machine virus, you're like, I can't give this a bad rating. It just brings up too many memories.
It's too close to home. Totally. Oh, guys, good times. Keep leaving those ratings on Spotify. Let us know what you think of the episodes we're talking about, and we're happy to talk about it on the show. All right, guys. Also, follow us on YouTube. Even if you subscribe to us on a podcast app, it would really help if you also check us out on YouTube, youtube.com/pull-to-open. It's actually a great place, yet another great place to leave an emoji title or a comment. There's actually lots of good comments on our activity on YouTube, giving YouTube a good reputation, the Pull to Open channel is. And you get to see all these fun Easter eggs in the background. You get to see us, guys. Look at all my posters and fun things that I have around. It's good times.
I guess
so
all
please
the
go ahead.
Cybermen stuff you've got going on there, Pete, is a reference to the 10th planet. It's as close as you can get.
There
to
you go. Yeah. Pretty good. Getting very close to the 10th planet here. Yeah, totally. So check us out there. Also follow us on TikTok. Like I said, we're at Pull to Open. We're very active there. We're trying to post short videos almost every day. Lots of great conversation there too. Good place to hit us up. Okay, well, this episode ain't gonna comment on itself. Let's get to it. I'm excited to get to the Smugglers, because then I'll be excited to get past doing the Smugglers. But there's things to say about this episode. And before we say those things, we need to summarize the episode, though, in record time.
That's right.
With a little segment we like to call TLDW, Too Long Didn't Watch, Too Long Doctor Who, where one of us will quickly get through the plot of the episode in question. This really
time, the first Too Long Can't Watch that we've ever done, because at least you could watch the animations, you could watch the Tony Snaps. Is that really watching? It's not really. Like, there are a few moments that have been preserved because they were too violent for the Australians. We'll get to that. But I'm stalling for time. But
you're stalling, I can tell.
If you, like me, 1 week ago knew absolutely nothing about the Smugglers, like, I assumed that they were future smugglers. One thing, I didn't even know it was a historical. So you may be wondering, what the hell is the Smugglers? How does it lead into the 10th planet? How does it connect on from the War Games? War Machines. Like, two fairly well-known stories. You may not know what falls in between. I'm here to catch you up in 2 minutes, right, Pete? Because we allot 30 seconds per classic serial episode. And
you're exactly right, sir. We allot that, and we are allotting it to you this week to summarize the Smugglers for everyone listening. Yep, too long. Don't bother. No, wait. This is the time. We've got to do it, though. We've got to do it. We've been doing every episode. We're doing this one now. All right. Okay. All right. So, are you ready, sir?
I'm ready. Tabs closed. Feeling pretty confident about this one, which is probably going to be my downfall. But let's see.
All right, here we go. It's time for the official Pull to Open summary of the Smugglers in 3, 2, 1, go.
London, 1966. Ben and Polly have just walked into the TARDIS to give the Doctor his key back, but he's already taken them away to Cornwall in the 17th century, and they don't believe that they're there, but the Doctor points it out. They end up talking to a church warden who gives the Doctor a secret code for he knows not what, and then sends them off to the inn. The church warden then gets stabbed by a ruffian named Cherub. And then at the inn, Ben and Polly get arrested for the murder while the Doctor gets kidnapped by pirates and taken to the ship of a guy called Captain Pike, who's a pirate with a pike on his hand. And Ben and Polly get out of prison by playing on the superstition of a guy named Tom, who's keeping them prisoner. And they have a voodoo doll with Tom's hair in it, so they escape that way. The Doctor plays on the gentleman-like desire of Captain Pike to appear like a gentleman, and then uses a tarot card trick to escape along with, I believe, the innkeeper. And meanwhile, the ruffians, they're searching for the treasure, Captain Pike, and he goes ashore and talks to the squire, and the squire basically says that Ben and Polly are murderers, and but he's sort of in cahoots with the smugglers, and it all leads to this attempt to try to get Captain Avery's treasure, an old pirate's treasure that they used to work for. But everyone converges on the crypt, the church crypt at the end, and the Doctor and Ben and Polly manage to escape after the pirates have been killed, I think, and then they make it back to the TARDIS, and they end up in what the Doctor says is the coldest place in the world, but we don't know what it is until the next story.
And time.
I was going to go back to the Cornish village there. So, meanwhile, everyone, I didn't even mention the revenue guy.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's kind of the one sort of plot thread you missed, but I've got to say, very ably done. I
Thank you.
think I would have got frustrated and just threw it. Said stuff happened and there's a church and people die, etc. Because that's kind of what it felt like. There's like a lot of stuff going on that you sort of, after a certain point, you question the relevance of and why you're even invested in it, right? Like this is basically a Doctor Who pirate story that just is really, really low stakes, and
super low stakes.
You kind of you just, it ends up being kind of a chore. I'll be honest with you. This is kind of a chore to get through this week.
Well,
and I split it off over three days, and it was it felt like 3 months. It was a tough one.
So let's get a bit meta about how we consumed this story, right? Because with a fully missing episode, you have, I believe that all the missing episodes we have audio, right? And we have telesnaps.
Right. Thanks to people recording on tape recorders, the broadcast, all the audio is preserved in some form.
Yes.
So that's basically what this was reconstructed from. What has, like, not that a lot has been.
Thank you to Doctor Who nerds of the 60s who were such nerds that they recorded from the TV with like little reel-to-reel tape recorders and literally took photos of the screen. Which was not as easy to do when you're just, if you're just in front of your screen with a smartphone. Like, this is actually like you had to get the film developed. It's like, wow.
Well, there were what's called telesnaps as well, right? So basically, there was someone on set who I believe the intent was they would take photos of the production and then sell those photos back to the actors. To my knowledge, I think that's basically what the idea was, so that they would have something for their portfolio, something to, show that this work they did, because obviously, nothing was ever broadcast again. Certainly nobody had any footage, let alone anything portable you could have these days. So it was sort of this service from behind the scenes that now is like, oh wow, this is like based in many stories like this one of the only things that exists. And I think you said in the pre-show, the only other bits that exist are a few of the much more violent moments where people are getting stabbed mostly, and there's blood, and that's mostly because
Longfoot,
down in
the church
Australia,
warden. Yeah.
right, he gets stabbed right in the back, and
Mm.
and it's because in Australia they decided to excise those bits, and they kept the bits, but not the episode. It's kind of ironic.
It really
but yeah,
is.
it's funny
sort of
to
a
watch.
Cinema Paradiso moment. I don't know if you've seen Cinema Paradiso. There's a wonderful bit at the end where all of the kisses, the on-screen kisses from romantic movies that have been excised, are found and strung together. And that's a beautiful moment. And I sort of feel like that's sort of what we need with the Smugglers, right? It's just we need to just have a short video with all of the stabby bits thrown together. There is also... Someone did take some video of the actual filming of the Smugglers, which took place much more on location than I believe that any Doctor Who up until this point, because it was all actually filmed in Cornwall.
Yeah, I think there was still some studio stuff with the crypt and whatever, but they definitely did the location stuff in Cornwall. I think most of the location shooting up until this point was London. So it's not like they never went outside the studio. I mean, obviously they did a lot with the Daleks Master Plan, Dalek Invasion of Earth and other episodes, but it was all in and around London. And this was the first time they kind of went a little further out. So Cornwall, for those that don't know, is in southwestern England. It's kind of like the southwestern tip of the island, I believe.
The tippy toe of southern England, and the director Julia Smith, only the second female director in the history of Doctor Who, was very familiar with that part of Cornwall. And that's why she was chosen to helm this episode.
So
she knew the beaches around Penzance, which is where this was filmed. Is it literally the Pirates of Penzance?
Oh, nice. So the how we watch this. So what I did, I did two things. So I got the audio itself and listened to that one time to sort of get my imagination going. And then I actually watched, I sat down with my daughter to watch essentially what's called, I guess, the Telesnap recreation. It's on Daily Motion, and I think the guys are called Loose Cannon.
Right, yeah, Loose Cannon's done a lot of reconstructions.
Yeah, and they did a really good job, actually, like in terms of like cutting from telesnap to telesnap, and timing it with the dialogue, and also having some descriptive text come in on the bottom. So I honestly thought the descriptive text was even more helpful than the audio version, which has Annika Wills, who plays Polly, years later did some bridging narration within the audio, but there's actually even more of it.
If listeners would like the audio, how did you find it? Where did you get it?
Oh, sorry, Audible. Yeah, Audible has it all.
Audible, okay.
So I used an Audible credit to buy the Smuggler. So whenever you want to basically listen to a Doctor Who missing episode, Audible's a good place to go for it.
Mm-hmm.
And they were all at CD too. They were actually put out by the BBC library at one point, but those are hard to come by. I think those are only on eBay. I don't know if you can actually buy those anymore.
Right. Audible might be your best bet. So by contrast, here's what I chose to do. I did download the Turnsticks novelization, but also I discovered, I did not know this, that you can get a transcript of pretty much every Doctor Who story online. I found a transcribing service. Chakotea.net appears to have all of these transcripts. So that's basically what I did.
That site is instrumental. I've been using that for a while. I should have let you know about it, because whenever I miss a bit of dialogue, I make a note and I go back to it with those transcripts, and that's what they said.
And that is, I mean, this may be one reason for the randomizer to bring us here. We'll get to other reasons, but I felt I had such a good experience reading the transcript that now I'm going to do this with every single one, every single story that we go to on Pull to Open. I'm going to read the transcript first, even if it isn't missing. to sort of get that stuff. Like I don't have to focus too much on the subtitles. I'm not going to miss a lot of things. I feel like reading the script, which is essentially what you're doing with the transcript, is not only a way to sort of reconstruct how a Doctor Who story is made and what the scriptwriter was going for, but yeah, definitely a way to sort of prepare yourself before all of the visuals kind of hit you, and you can kind of focus a little bit more. So yeah, thank you, Randomizer, for sort of necessitating this service. Necessity is the mother of invention, and I actually really liked it. I mean, it's
Really?
Well, okay, not compared to most Doctor Who stories, no. But compared to what I thought I was going to have to experience with the Smugglers, like I could hear like the bad pirate voices in my head. Vasti scurvy sea dog, and it was
Sawbones.
Sawbones, surprisingly atmospheric, and I believe perhaps the only time the Doctor is described as Sawbones. In the show, I can't remember another episode where this happens, but you would think it would happen all the time, right? Sawbones was such a common word throughout a lot of the periods of history that the Doctor visits, that you'd think that he might get that appellation before this or after this, but no, it's great. So I love that. I love little, like I found it pretty funny. Like a lot of the things I thought I would have found tedious if I just watched the telesnaps, I enjoyed in the transcript.
So I would think the reason they probably haven't done the Sawbones thing again is probably because of the experience on this episode. And if it's gonna make you think of the Smugglers, I'm not sure if it's such a great thing. But I can't mirror your enthusiasm on this. I just honestly, like I say, this was very much a chore to get through. I think all the pirate stuff, it's kind of funny. Like you could point to almost any of the pirate episodes of Doctor Who and say like, this is probably why they never did pirates again. Although they've done it like 3 or 4 times. So I guess I thought, when I was thinking about my commentary, it's like, oh, obviously they didn't do it until Curse of the Black Spot in the new series. Although arguably they kind of did, right? Because they did the Space Pirates.
Yeah.
Well, the Pirate Planet, that is pirate in the title, but I don't know. There's a little bit of, I guess there's like the robot bird and all that other stuff. So there's a little bit of pirate stuff here and there throughout. But this is like honestly probably the most stereotypical, most by the numbers pirate stuff, and it just doesn't really feel fun. It feels like they're kind of almost taking it really seriously, even with these caricatures. And you got the captain, his name's Pike, he's got a pike for a hand. And
there is that joke about Captain Hook, which is what was Captain Hook's name before he lost his hand to the crocodile. I think a number of comedians have sort of brought that up in regarding Peter Pan, and you have the same question here, right? Like, what was Captain Pike's name before he had a pike that he reveals at the cliffhanger at the end of episode 1? Yeah, we don't get to hear that.
He doesn't even get to kill anyone with it until all that stuff with Jamaica later. And again, like his people, like they're named literally Spaniard, Jamaica, and Gaptooth. It's kind of like, okay, I guess, they're pirates and they're simpletons and they're making these simple nicknames. And I guess that's sort of the idea, but it's, I mean, it's all just really on the nose. I mean, the eye patch, they're going for buried treasure. They're drinking to excess, and that works against them at the end. It's like, oh, come on. Like what's interesting here, or at least what's fun here? Like you feel like if you're going to go lean this far into pirate stereotypes, they should be having more fun with it. And, again, it was years later, obviously in a different era and a different place. But if you look at like Pirates of the Caribbean, right, where they, obviously they have all the stereotypes there too, but there's some irony. They turn some of them on their head. And then you have like this amazing, obviously, performance from in the lead role that just takes it all to another level. And this is kind of like, let's take the same formula and not even try.
Well, I actually kind of like that. There is a certain innocence to the Smugglers, and there's a certain innocence of the portrayal pirates. And yeah, we should say that the actor who played Jamaica is the first black actor in Doctor Who to have a significant speaking role. It's unfortunate that he dies. It's unfortunate that he is kind of berated by the captain in almost racist terms. It is good
it's unfortunate.
that his name was changed from Crow, which would have been worse. But yeah, I can sort of see that in pirate times you would just kind of name your crew like whatever. Oh, I picked you up in Jamaica. You're called Jamaica now. I picked you up in Spain. You're the Spaniard. Like, why would you necessarily need more than that to denote, when you wanted someone on your crew? So yeah, I like the sort of the talk like a pirate aspect of it, and the fact that they go for ye a lot rather than you, like they're really doubling down on the old timey speech. And you're right, this day and age we would not stand for that. But in the early 60s or mid 60s, I guess this is, you could still sort of get away with that stereotype. It was, Treasure Island was what you were thinking of. And I should say, I'm not going to get too far into the history corner yet, but this was clearly based on something called Dr. Sin. S-Y-N. Have you heard of Dr. Sin?
I've not heard of Dr. Sin.
You may also have heard it. It actually got made into a Disney movie, surprisingly, called Dr. Sin, alias the Scarecrow, where Patrick McGoohan from The Prisoner was playing Dr. Sin in this, which is interesting because he was one of the names brought up as a replacement for William Hartnell, which was, finally decided during the filming of The Smugglers. So there's an interesting connection. And we'll get to talking about that later. But yeah, so it's a story. It was like a very popular, I guess, 1915 yarn that there were a bunch of sequel novels. There was a 1937 movie. It's very violent stuff, but it is about this guy who is actually who is an ex-pirate, very much like the church warden in The Smugglers, who actually is anti the revenue men. He's anti the customs people, and helps the smugglers evade them. So it's like that is a story where the smugglers are the heroes. So it's kind of interesting that it's reversed here, and kind of the revenue guy, the king's man, is one of the heroes here. But that's what they were going for, and that it would have been very fresh in their minds. It was actually in theaters when Doctor Who started in November 1963. There was a double bill in the UK of The Sword and the Stone, the Disney version of the Once and Future King, and Dr. Sin alias the Scarecrow. So it was very contemporary to be thinking of this. This is where Brian Hales got the idea. Now, Brian Hales, let's take a brief diversion.
Let's talk about Brian Hales, yeah.
Yeah, we've seen a few of his stories before. He did come up with the idea for the Celestial Toymaker,
right?
And this was his second idea and the first one that he actually saw through to completion by himself. But do you know, Pete, the name of the story that he initially pitched for this slot?
I don't. Tell me what that is.
It would have been easily the most controversial story name in Doctor Who history, because it was simply going to be called The Nazis. That's right.
Okay.
The Nazis. Not Doctor Who and an exciting adventure with the Nazis. Not Let's Kill the Nazis, but the Nazis. And it would have seen the Dr. Ben and Polly going to 1930s Germany, having to become members of the Nazi party to go undercover.
Oh, wow.
So that is, spoiler alert, my first reason why the randomizer brought us here, because you remember there was some Nazi talk and some Berlin in 1937 talk in Kill the Moon.
There is a little bit. Yeah.
Yes.
It's always a good go-to. And when you're talking about affecting history, and that's interesting because a couple years later, I believe Star Trek did exactly that. Now they didn't go back in time, but basically they visited Nazi planet, and there's a lot of scenes with Kirk, Spock, and McCoy essentially
In
dressing
Nazi
up as
outfits.
Nazis and, with swastikas on their arms and all that stuff.
Yeah, which
So
definitely hasn't aged well.
yeah,
So
hasn't
that
aged well,
could
but I mean,
be-
again, I think I would have liked something much more notable than this, which, with the pirate stuff and the village and that it's not even close to London. Like we said it before, it's very low stakes. It's kind of like a bunch of stuff that happens. There's a Byzantine plot that involves pirates and people in the local village who are also kind of smugglers. I couldn't really tell who's the smugglers now. Is it like the squire and folks, or is it the pirates?
Yeah.
Is it both?
The Squire is clearly
And
involved at a distance, right? He's just sort of
yeah,
in it for himself. But then when he sees how scurvy ye actual pirates are, he kind of changes his mind. And the Squire, like if this was an RTD story, like you'd very much focus much more on the Squire kind of getting redeemed by the end, right? He's fighting on the Doctor's side by the end and
right.
against the pirates. But
yeah,
he's
you could
clearly in
almost
on
see it like that guy in Silence of the Library who seems like he's a jerk at first and then ends up being kind of the nice benefactor by the end.
And he is trying to frame Ben and Polly at the start. So
yeah,
very interesting point to talk about.
Here's the thing. I'm glad you mentioned Ben and Polly, because I do think in terms of stuff I liked as their first adventure with the Doctor and getting to show off who their personalities are and what they're good at, I think this works really well. I've found whenever Michael Craze and Annika Wills were, can't really say on screen, even though it was a telesnap, but I looked forward to seeing what they were going to do. And I wanted more there. Like, if anything, I wanted them to do more interesting things than just run between the village and the church and get captured a lot, which is essentially most of what they do. Their best moment by far is, I believe it's in episode 2, when they're prisoners and they reason that this is a superstitious time and that they can essentially pretend to be witches and fool the guy into thinking that you need to let them go. And that's good. I like that idea of like we have future knowledge, or in this case, sort of future perspective that we can put on this situation and problem solve. I wanted more of that. And
well, let's talk about Ben and Polly, because this is one of the reasons which I think that the Smugglers, the still waters of the Smugglers do run a little deeper than we suspect at first blush. So this is the first something. It is the first time that the Doctor has been outnumbered by newcomers to the TARDIS. Because
That's
obviously the first episode, An Unearthly Child, Ian and Barbara knew, but the Doctor has Susan with him, so they're not outnumbered. Then Vicky joins, and at every point, like the Doctor is still at least equaled in number between people who've travelled in the TARDIS before, and here they are, straying on board the TARDIS. Not the first to do that. I believe Dodo did that herself, but he has to explain it to both of them, and they don't believe, and it is interesting that Polly is the one who does believe. Like, she's I didn't watch X-Files, but one of them was, which was the one that believed, was it Mulder or Scully who believed and the other one didn't, right?
Mulder was the believer, Scully was the skeptic.
Yes, so
here the gender roles are reversed.
Yeah, their gender roles are reversed, but it is interesting, and we sort of we actually do get a little bit of talk of gender, because Polly is constantly mistaken for a boy. Even though, I mean, that's when you see the outfit she's wearing, like, oh, just because she's wearing trousers, is that what's going on? But it's interesting the way that they react. Like, they are much more proactive companions. As you mentioned, the use of the voodoo doll, which is very interesting, kind of thing that the Doctor himself might have done in another story. But you do get the sense that the show is sort of trying to hedge its bets in case William Hartnell is still there. Like, they're going to have to focus a lot more on the companions, since he's just like not great, fluffing his lines, gets very tired very quickly. And this could be covering for that. But
Yeah, they're definitely very
Ben,
capable. Yeah.
Ben
I
doesn't
really
believe
liked.
that he's there, and the Doctor proves him wrong. I like that bit.
Yeah, Ben really won me over pretty quickly in that he's got a personality. Like he's a fun dude. He wants to get back to his ship, but he has a lot of good lines, even though they're sort of laced with 60s values and sexism here and there. He's fun. I have to say, I laughed at the line where he tells Polly to put a kettle on when she gets to the TARDIS, even though Polly's always constantly being asked, it seems like every time we see her to either make coffee or tea or something. But in this case, I thought it was an amusing line because it's not just him being dismissive of her. Honestly, it's a reassuring line in my view, in that he's like, once you get to the TARDIS, put a kettle on, not just because we're all going to need a cup of tea after this, but because the TARDIS is there and it's a place you can do that and it's a refuge. And remember, Polly, we're almost home. It's like that's a good little moment for him because he makes light, because they're in this sort of dire situation, and because of the way Ben is, he actually gives her some comfort, even though, again, laced a little bit with this sort of I guess inadvertent sexism of the time. I don't know.
I don't know.
But I think it's an okay
culture,
line.
The whole put the kettle on thing, like that's not very gender specific in British culture. That's
fair.
Who gets back to the house?
Good. I feel better about it now.
So yeah, you're okay.
It's just I think I'm seared. I'm seared a little bit by the 10th planet when Polly is really almost dismissed in terms of like being asked to make coffee, which sort of. It was a searing kind of moment for me, and I maybe I'm a little protective of Polly now, especially because Annika Wills is been very good about doing things like the narration I mentioned and being a good sort of legacy member of the Doctor Who community.
She did mention this, I believe, Annika Wills did, as her favorite story, and it is actually pretty good for Polly when you look at it. Like, Polly is smarter than Ben in this story. She gets it more quickly. She understands that they're in a time machine. She's not
smarter. I mean, I don't know if that's smarter. That's just like she has a more willing to go with it personality, I guess.
She's more willing to go with it, whereas Ben is kind of just revealed as almost an automaton, right? He just wants to get back to barracks. He's right. You can almost see that he's kind of terrified of being of having his own autonomy back, right? And not being told what to do. And he does have a great line that is at his expense, where he's like, "Oh, we're going to go to the far future next," where the Doctor's like, "Oh, well, most likely we'll go to the far future. We're going to go to the far future. There won't even be a navy." Which I love. He's like, that's his main concern. It's like he really wants the navy to still be there. He wants to go back to barracks. He's like, "I'm just a sailor. Like, don't involve me." He
wants his predictable life.
Exactly. Don't give me any agency, which is very interesting. And is an extreme skeptic at the same time. Like, he's sure that they're still there in the 20th century, even though it's clearly not London. He thinks they just moved in space and not time. And he's like, "Oh, look, there's a church. Obviously we're in the 20th century." And the Doctor has to be like, "No, you idiot. there are churches everywhere and have been for thousands of years." So yeah, good story for Polly. But speaking of the companions, there's one line right at the start that I think it pays us to focus in on. Do you remember where the Doctor, like they leave the TARDIS, they go into the cave that the TARDIS has landed in, and the Doctor has this line about, "I thought I was going to be alone again." I'm sure I was going to be alone again. And this can be read two ways, and people have over the years read this two ways. Like, does he want to be alone? Is the First Doctor that much of a curmudgeon that he was like looking forward to traveling by himself? Or is he wearing a bit thin? Yeah. Is it like, I was worried I was going to be alone? I
was thinking like his body's wearing a bit thin, and I feel like it's a bit, he's thinking, I'm going to go off, be alone, and either die or regenerate. Like, and if you look at it in the context of Twice Upon a Time, like maybe he was considering like, maybe I'm done, and maybe he's getting into this zone where he doesn't want to even go on. and he's getting like it's interesting to think about that context of where the Doctor's at and reflect on the show itself and where William Hartnell was at, because as dramatized in Adventure in Space and Time, he was getting, obviously his health was failing, but there was suddenly this revolving door of companions because the show was getting kind of troubled in its season 3 in particular, and he was not really in a good place anymore. And there's sort of a famous behind the scenes story here from the director, Julia Smith. Is it Smith? I forgot. And
yes, I believe you're right.
Smith. Yeah, Julia Smith, we mentioned earlier. Mm-hmm. And she talks about this moment where come over here and do this thing on the console, and he laid into her apparently. And then I'm not sure if this is the scene maybe that inspired that bit in Adventure in Space and Time, where he's like, no, this part of the console does this, and this other part of the console does that, and just freaked out about it. And
I'm glad
in that. In that moment, you can sort of tell he's like trying to hang on to something.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that is actually the only visual thing that I consumed as part of preparation for this podcast. Because I kind of wanted to see if there was any hint that, how they do play the scene where William Hartnell is told by the Brian Cox character who plays Sidney Newman. They have Sidney Newman telling him that, he's not going to continue in the show. In fact, it was Innes Lloyd, the producer, and it was sort of mutual agreement, right?
Right.
So, I wanted to see how far they got it wrong. They got it pretty wrong. But first of all, Adventure in Space and Time will never not leave me in floods of tears at the end.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm getting choked up just thinking of it now. Oh, my God. And the scene with Matt Smith just destroys me every time. That one scene where he's like, oh, I guess I'm seeing the future here. Like, I guess I see the show is in safe hands. It's continuing. I love.
Well, that's also the scene. I think that is, it's kind of a razor. It's like either you love it or you hate it. And I don't want to get too far on a tangent, but the Matt Smith thing, like, I loved it. My wife did not. She was like, that was so weird and out of nowhere. I could definitely see it either way.
I like it because it comes directly after the Patrick Troughton introduction, and it's sort of like, I'm seeing that this could continue down the line. Love it. Definitely. I think it earns that moment of sort of playing around with space and time, as it were. But they also have the bit of dialogue that I'm not sure where it's from. It might be Dalek's Master Plan. It's where the Doctor thinks that Stephen has left him.
Okay.
You remember that part? And he has this line of like, oh, nobody understands me. Everyone left me. Even Susan, even Vicky. And it's an actual line of dialogue from the show. And I believe it's a missing episode, which is why we don't have that video. But it reminded me, like, it is weird. The whole First Doctor companion thing is weird. Like, he pushes Susan away. He doesn't give Susan the option of traveling on. He makes sure she stays on Earth with David at the end of Dalek Invasion of Earth. And obviously the fabulous speech about prove to me I'm not wrong in my beliefs. One day I shall come back, etc., etc. But the First Doctor is always ambivalent about whether he even wants to travel with anyone. He's always getting mad at people. He does seem to need them. They do build into the script that he can't even remember Chesterton's name. Constantly calling him Chatterton, as he does in the speech post Stephen. But we also see it at the end of the War Games, like where Dodo doesn't even say goodbye, which was
the War Machines.
War Machines. Yes. Dodo doesn't say goodbye. Like, she just vanishes in the end of season episode 2, I believe. And then it's left to Ben and Polly at the very end to say, oh, Dodo says goodbye. And the Doctor has a bit of a moment of outrage of like, oh, she couldn't even come say goodbye in person. So, like, there's really a sense of something deeper going on here, of how the Doctor relates to the humans that he takes with him. I
will say it's a little weird.
He's hurt.
It's a little weird that the humans are so fleeting too. And I think that's when you were talking about Ben there, it is kind of hilarious how he doesn't get it, that just how wondrous this is. And so how crazy lucky he is maybe unlucky if you think about the mortal danger you're in, but it is like no one else has this opportunity. And I will say that the new series is much better about that the companions just generally appreciate, like, wow, you know, you had to get back to your ship. Like, what?
Right.
What do you care? Like, I mean, you can go like literally anywhere in the universe.
Yeah, and the
so
Doctor, he's definitely got better PR as time has gone on. Like, as soon as he came up with the phrase "all of time and space, where do you want to go next?" Like, if only the Hartnell Doctor had said it in that sort of snappy way, you know. But that's kind of an invitation, and clearly the First Doctor was not inviting them, and he's kind of pissed that they're there. But also, by the way, did you notice he very much explicitly says he can't pilot the TARDIS, he can't control where it goes next. Like,
he's basically a randomizer.
Basically a randomizer. And this may be the most explicit that the show ever gets about that. He says it a couple of times at the beginning and the end. Like, I cannot return you to London 1966. I honestly have no clue. And that's sort of hinted at throughout, you know, the earlier Hartnell era where he's trying to get Ian and Barbara back. But never this explicit, I think. Am I right?
Yeah, no, he's it seems like he's kind of given up in a sense of like trying to figure out the TARDIS, which again, I think is all in keeping with this little bit of arc here at the end of season 3 and beginning of season 4 here, in that he, you know, and the actor and the show were all a little unsure, maybe a little tired of this, and not really coming down on whether do we really even want this to keep going, right? And Ben and Polly just happen to be there and along for the ride, and I'm glad they are, because they're young, they're vibrant, they're, you know, down for doing, well, maybe not Ben so much, but they're there to kind of like give him a little bit more of that, you know, sense of like, you know, this thing could keep going if you wanted it to keep going.
Yeah.
And
they do have a sense of fearlessness, like when they walk into the inn and they're terribly amused by the way everyone looks in the inn. Like, I guess as you would, and this is sort of one of the moments where I was like, oh, I really do feel like I've been transported back in time here. Like they remark on how sort of weird and ugly everyone looks in the inn, basically, which they would.
Yeah.
If you went back to 17th century England, you'd like, that's one of the first things you'd notice, be like, wow, everyone's got smallpox scars. Everyone is just
what's
like,
with all the poop in the street?
But yeah, you don't really get that in Doctor Who a lot, so I kind of appreciated that notion.
Yeah.
But they're fearless about it. Like, they're laughing at it. They enjoy it. And even when they get arrested, like, yeah, Polly is a bit upset about the rats in the cell, but they're basically okay.
Well, and it's good they have each other to play off of and sort of appreciate what both of them are going through. And the Doctor can see that at a distance, so they don't need to bounce off the Doctor, which a lot of sort of single companions need to do, particularly in the new series. Again, I think it's very appropriate for this, and sort of the Doctor can observe them and see how they, you know, their enthusiasm, how they interact with each other, certainly as young people. There's even, you know, I mean, I think they went, I guess, about as far as you would want to in the 60s in terms of suggesting an attraction. I mean, there is a point where Polly calls Ben handsome. And they're, you know, I guess a little flirty with each other. There was a little bit, I think, in the War Machines, how they meet.
I should point out that she is doing a Cornish accent there, and sort of like it's that's kind of a Cornish trope, right? Oh, me lovely. Ooh, me handsome. You know, she's like being a busty barmaid kind of character.
Oh, but yeah, well, exactly. She's
in a bar, right?
Having fun with it. Yeah, yeah. I mean, she's obviously having fun with it. And again, like, I think it speaks a little bit back to how they met in the War Machines, where Ben's sort of trying to chat her up a little bit. But I mean, you know, a couple young people. I mean, I think we all imagined that Ben and Polly went off and had probably like a great relationship after they ditched the Doctor in the Faceless Ones. So, yeah, I mean, like, that energy is really on it. To me, if anything saves this episode, it's them. Because I kind of wanted to see not just their energy, but also like that energy directed towards solving the issue at hand. And there is, so I want to cut to what I think is probably one of the more definitive moments here. And I think it's arguably a definitive moment in Doctor Who, where the Doctor in episode 4 talks about his moral obligation. And what's happened is like they're there at the crypt. They have the secret passage to the TARDIS. They're ready to go. Ben wants to go. I mean, he's all about, like, he's basically second only to Perry as the companion who wants to go back to the TARDIS the most. But then the Doctor's like, you can't do that. He's basically like, no, there's bad things going on here. He even sort of says, I might be responsible for it. I don't think he is, but I think it is more that he's there and able to do something about a bad thing that will probably happen. And exactly, it doesn't matter if the TARDIS is right there with the door wide open. You can't just leave.
Right.
And so this sort of harkens back to something we've talked about a few times of like, why don't they just go? There's danger. It's like, well, that's because they run into danger. That's what the Doctor does. And I think he's kind of, reminded of that a little bit here, particularly with, the two companions there with this energy, and sort of reminded, like, kind of like maybe even stating for himself what this is about, restating what he stands for.
Say that. Yeah, this suggests that there may be an overall arc for the First Doctor, right? That he does start to learn that he has a moral obligation. I mean, we got to remember that this is the youngest Doctor that we ever encounter. At least,
and began as kind of an anti-hero in the first episode, right? Back in Unearthly Child, he's kind of a jerk and kind of wants to go and doesn't really care about anyone.
And even in the Romans, which we've been to, like that question of whether he was actually a pyromaniac, and he doesn't really care that Rome burnt down and he may have caused it, which is very stark contrast to this. Like, we've said the Doctor likes it when things go boom. Well, no, he's worried that the pirates are going to sack the whole village. That was their intent.
Yeah.
And he does feel morally obliged because he knows that he does. It's a little butterfly effect thing that appears to be kicking in here in his awareness, right? He may have somehow inadvertently assisted the pirates in their evil goal here.
Yeah, just by being there, really. Because if you think about it, when they first arrive and they talk to the church warden, who's an ex-pirate, because he helps him with his dislocated finger, that's how he sort of wins him over. He's then entrusted with this knowledge, the secret code to find the treasure. And now that sets off a bunch of things. Now, like, for some reason, like, Cherub kind of makes a mistake in killing him, I think. And like, well, wait a minute now. This is the one guy that you thought had the code. But anyway, because the Doctor still has it, they're deeply involved.
Yeah, Cherub would not have stabbed Longfoot if the Doctor hadn't been talking to him. So yeah, he is responsible in a way, even though he was passive in that exchange. By the way, is it that easy to reset a dislocated finger? I don't know. Maybe some
I'll give it to him.
Writing on this. But it's, it's one of those moments where the Doctor proves that he actually is a Sawbones, right? He does have a little bit of medical knowledge to him.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it's a great scene. I think it works really well, again, in this story. And I think you're right. Like, as a sort of closing arc for the First Doctor, it's more satisfying than really what happens in the 10th Planet because, famously Hartnell got sick. He wasn't in for a whole episode, like the third episode of the 10th Planet. He's not there. Mm-hmm. He's very passive in the 10th Planet. Like, we did that one in the podcast a couple years ago now. And I remember, I think we both remarked at the time, it's unfortunate this is his swan song, but I'm really glad he has this scene in The Smugglers to sort of take command of the situation and kind of restate what being the Doctor is all about. And it's good. It's a good final little moment for him.
And Hartnell is fluffing a lot of his lines here. He does not sort of famously does not fluff the line that actually, the Longfoot actor does fluff the line of like the stuff that they're going to have to figure out later with the names on the graves, right? He messes up the names. The Doctor actually says it correctly. So he does get one in against his fellow actors there. Like, oh, you're the one who fluffed the line. I'm the one who said it accurately. But I also kind of detected a certain lightness to Hartnell in here, and I wonder if that's kind of like he seems to be laughing a lot. There's a lot of little chuckles to himself, which yes, one of his signature moves, but also like he knows at this point he's only going to film one more show, one more story. And
Well, did he know though? Did he know at this point?
Yeah. So during the Smugglers is when he was told, or
okay, he had the conversation. Interesting.
And so he knows, and it's also the end of a shooting. Like they're shooting this at the end of season 3 to give them some padding for season 4. So yeah, he knows he's only going to shoot one more thing, and he's got a vacation coming up. Interestingly, they actually went on vacation in Cornwall, he and his wife, after this.
That's funny.
and that's when news broke that Patrick Troughton was going to be taking over.
Yeah.
That's
well, the shooting schedules were also just really brutal back in the day. Like you would be like filming
one story
something like, yeah. And it was, you were filming 10, 11 months out of the year or something like that. It was crazy. You'd be filming, or at least it was broadcast like through most of the year. So you wouldn't really get much time off.
Yeah, God. I mean, we think we've got a demanding schedule, having to talk about one Doctor Who story a week for an hour or so on a podcast. This, actually shooting it, remembering all your lines, no wonder he fluffs so many of them. Like having 1 week to learn your script, that's crazy.
So I got to say, I was disappointed, and I don't really get it, for one of the other reasons this episode is so notable. It has literally no music. There is no soundtrack at all at any point in any episode, any of the 4 episodes. Like literally the only music is the opening and closing credits. And was it budget? What an odd choice. And it just really, again, made the whole thing, it already has low stakes, makes it feel even lower, and it just clearly does not add anything, but it's a notable thing.
You do get a lot of nature noises. Like in the first episode, you get, the wind and the storm and the sound of the sea, and all of that is in it. I almost got kind of Wuthering Heights like vibes from that. This is kind of just stormy, English, and dark, brooding. And these days, when there's incidental music everywhere and everything, it's almost refreshing to see a story where it isn't. And it's certainly refreshing coming from something like, we talked about it in The Mind of Evil, the Pertwee era, where they just won't stop with the synthesizer.
Yeah, but I prefer that. I would prefer over-synthesized weirdness than just nothing, right? Because then you just, at least I'd have an opinion on it, and it would provoke something. Here, it's just kind of like, oh yeah, and then I think I was about halfway through episode 2. I don't think I've heard any music, and then I kind of looked up the notes on the show, and it's like there's literally no incidental music at all. Like very very weird.
Yeah, it is weird, and I wonder if that had any effect on sort of the audience score and the viewing figures, which were notoriously low. This is one of the lowest rated, audience figures for any classic Who. Something like 4 million people watched it. They rated it below 50 in the audience appreciation index. Like it's very, very bad score. Sort of continuing a bad run for Doctor Who in general, right? So maybe the people of 1966 wanted a little bit more music. Or maybe they wanted a nice rest after Jukebox Jury, which would have come on before this and be absolutely stuffed with music. So yeah, who knows? But speaking of 1966, it's interesting that we don't get any actual time, year. All we get is, for some reason, the Doctor nails it that this is the 17th century, the 1600s, right? And we've almost got like a unit dating controversy thing here going on, because a lot of the smuggler situations that this was based on, like the smugglers that inspired the Dr. Sin stories, were actually 18th century, 1700s. That was the golden era of smuggling. So why is the Doctor so sure? And also, well, now here's the thing: we can sort of place this in space and time a little bit in time, because there is discussion of Captain Avery the most notorious pirate, Henry Avery, also known as Henry Every, who does, I'll get this out of the way first, he is played by Hugh Bonneville in The Curse of the Black Spot. That is Captain Every. So this, so this is, kind of a prequel in a way, except it wasn't actually intended. The writer of Curse of the Black Spot said that he just kind of took Henry Avery as, a famous pirate, didn't actually know that he'd been mentioned in Doctor Who before, even though the whole MacGuffin of the Smugglers is Avery's treasure. So it is accidental that there's a Black Spot connection. So Henry Avery, should we just dive into Chris's history corner for a second here?
Let's go in the corner.
All right. So first of all, I just want to say about the date 1699 is roughly where this episode is likely to be set, because Captain Avery has been said to be missing or dead for some years, but it's also the 17th century. So pretty much 1699 is the only time we can locate this. This is the last recorded site of Avery, who was known as the King of the Pirates. They kind of did have that accurate. Is around 1696, after he did do this big job, like one of the biggest acts of piracy in history. He stole a lot of treasure that was headed for for Mecca, I believe, and really earned the ire of the Mughals, and then supposedly died penniless. Maybe
troublemaker.
We don't really know how it ended. Absolutely, he. Yeah, I mean, he, they were right about, like, he makes Captain Morgan look like not even a pirate. But it's interesting. They only talk about his treasure. They don't really talk about what happened to him, except that he kind of died penniless, which is probably the case from what little we know in history. So, yeah, even though Avery does show up again in Curse of the Black Spot and is revealed to have been missing in time, he did disappear here. He did leave a lot of treasure. He did probably die penniless, so that the curse of his treasure is complete. And the show is actually pretty accurate. I just wish that they'd had a line where they say that it's 1699, because that makes such a nice contrast with Ben keeping on talking about 1966, wanting to return to 1966. No, it's not 1966. It's 1699. And I feel like a modern writer would have just thrown that in. But yeah, Brian Hales,
not bad.
Super.
It's like Gretzky versus Lemieux, man. You'd see them right beside each other. Nice. All right. Even though there's not a lot of question as to... Oh.
Yeah. One other thing we should mention, in the history of the show, of course, Twice Upon a Time has this whole issue. We've discussed this before with brandy, the Doctor having brandy in the TARDIS. How does that square with the fact that he says several points during his tenure that he is teetotal? And we've been across this before. And in this story, he does refuse brandy, but doesn't refuse wine. So that's interesting. But he specifically refuses brandy at the inn, and then we were led to believe a story later he has brandy in the TARDIS. So what's going on here? Especially is the fact that Terrence Dicks changes it around in the novelization, and the Doctor does drink brandy in the novelization. So what's going on? Does the Doctor drink or doesn't he drink?
I know. The Doctor lies. Remember rule number 1. It's a very interesting thing. It was so obvious. My daughter noticed it. Like, she's 10 and she's like, wait a minute. He just refused to drink. And she also remembered one of something recently. I forget what was the one he was sort of drinking in or not drinking in.
Probably.
The Gunfighters, yes. Yeah. Never touched the stuff. So
was definitely drinking brandy. Not drinking brandy, rather, yeah. Mm. Refused it, drank milk.
Still figuring out where he stands on that.
I think this is more... I think this is more grist for the idea that the first Doctor is actually an alcoholic who keeps falling off the wagon.
Totally. There's still a question of the Doctor's status in terms of his alcoholism, but there are some other questions that we need to answer, and those, of course, are the 4 questions to Doomsday. First question, why did the randomizer take us here? All I can figure is that it wants to strengthen our character. It's basically making us question our resolve to get through every single episode of Doctor Who, because this one was tough for me. So that's my theory on this.
I thought of the same thing at first, but then once I noticed that the Doctor is like all set on staying in a place when he's been involved, which is the exact opposite of Kill the Moon. I think the randomizer wanted to provide us with a contrast there. And, I also think it may be getting us ahead of the game here because of the forthcoming animation. And, we wanted us to be Doctor Who hipsters. So, we could talk about having watched it before we see the animated version. I'm also a little bit worried about potential radicalization of the randomizer, that it is... that there's the Nazi connection. This, in an alternate universe, Pull to Open, we are actually talking about the Brian Hales episode, The Nazis, right now.
Right.
And so maybe it may be hurting us into that. And of course, there's the, Hitler mentioned Kill the Moon. If we go to Let's Kill Hitler next, I will be very worried about the randomizer.
All right, me too. Okay, so second question. What if the evil plot had succeeded? So, what's the evil plot?
Yes.
Is it, I guess it's Pikes, right? I mean, there's a few evil plots, to be honest with you. But Pikes, I guess you have to assume they're not drinking as much later and are a little better at fighting off the revenue men and get away with it. And does that mean they become, the renowned pirates that Avery, maybe even eclipsing Avery in history, because they get the treasure and they're all, it's all Pirates Day for all.
I mean, the evil plot also involved kind of burning down the village, which,
that's true.
Maybe that has some knock-on effects in time. But yeah, it is very hard to say that anything is going to happen here, except maybe the Doctor regenerates into Patrick Troughton in a story early, or Ben and Polly get killed in the...
Ben and Polly don't make out that well then.
Yeah. And the Doctor is then sort of forever
gets a little grim,
afraid to bring on new companions. Yeah. Maybe he just doesn't bring Jamie on board in the Highlanders. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, good thing he's a little wilier than Pike, and good thing those guys like to drink. All right. Moving on quickly through the questions.
The next question.
The third question, where is the Clara Splinter?
Well, maybe...
So there aren't
she is the
any other...
just off screen.
Maybe, because there's no other female characters notably other than Polly. So she would have to be off screen. And so my guess is that Tom is like really superstitious. So I feel like the Clara Splinter got here a little earlier, basically showed Tom her cell phone or something to get him to like believe in witchcraft, and turned him into this gullible guy who, all you have to do is string some straw together and moan, and he's fooled into thinking you're a witch. So, that's my best guess.
Or she's the busty barmaid, making sure that everyone is good and drunk. All the pirates are good and drunk in this. Maybe she's going around sort of talking up the idea of being a gentleman. We haven't really talked about that this is a very class-conscious story.
True.
Kind of hinted at it, that, that is kind of Captain Pike's downfall, is that the Doctor does talk him into being a gentleman. And maybe she's also kind of getting the superstition level up on the ship, with regards to the cartomancy. It's not actually tarot cards the Doctor's using. He's performing cartomancy with regular playing cards. And so maybe she's in another adventure with the pirates, making sure that they're afraid of that.
Oh, yeah. That makes sense. Yeah, I kind of wasn't sure what was going on there, because it was like clearly playing cards, but it was treating them like tarot cards. I don't know, enough to fool Jamaica, so got the job done.
Poor Jamaica.
All right, guys, it is time for the final question, the only question, the question that matters most to the smugglers, which is, what do we think of this episode? The Pull to Open rating system, of course, has 5 ratings. There is a Dalek, which is what we have for a good episode of Doctor Who. An Ogron, which is what we have for a perhaps not so good episode of Doctor Who. The Professor Hater, which is a not so great episode, but at least we learned something. And the Viscount Banger, which we reserve for the best of the best. And finally, the Fixed Point in Time, which means it's an episode that we simply cannot rate. It is beyond rating. It means too much to us in some form that we refuse to rate it. It just defies rating. Rarely used, the Fixed Point in Time.
Yeah.
You go ahead. You go first.
I'm tempted to almost tempted to give it a fixed point in time. But I think I'm going to opt for a Professor Hater, or maybe a Captain Hater for this one, because I think it was a learning point for Doctor Who. I think it was sort of, the historicals end here. We still got the Highlanders, but I feel like this was, the Highlanders was kind of highly regarded, right? Just introduced Jamie, so it's sort of a nice high point for the historicals to end on. I feel like they already learned at this point. They're not going to do historicals anymore. And that the Smugglers was,
right,
the sort of example of why you don't. Why even as much as I love the atmospheric nature of, you really get pulled into the 17th century here for a lot of reasons, even if it sort of seems a bit cliched to us, the way the pirates are talking and the way the Cornish people are talking, me hearties. It's still, you kind of learn why historicals don't necessarily work in a Doctor Who context. So I'm not going to give it a lazy Ogron. I think it was Doctor Who trying its first piratical adventure, and learning why that doesn't work.
I'll say no, wrong, Ogron. And that's because I mean, really, I would much rather watch Orphan 55 than this again. I'm sorry. It has moments, yes. I do like Ben and Polly. There's a few things you can read into the arc of William Hartnell and the First Doctor, although those, if we're being honest, I think those are mostly back reads and retconning a little bit. But I'm sorry, I just can't. It's an Ogron. Maybe it's Vacation in Cornwall, this Ogron, but it's definitely not an episode. I hadn't seen it before, and I'm probably never going to see it again. So,
except you may when the animated version comes out.
Oh my god, that must be one I really hold out on. Guys, this is it. That was the Smugglers, and it's time for us to go back into our time space machine, activate the randomizer, and figure out where we are going next in the canon of the show we like to call Doctor Who. So
the randomizer
of course,
has 2 parts. The codex, which Peter's looking at, and the executor, which is random.org, which I am standing at the controls of random.org and throwing up my hands and saying, sorry, Ben and Polly, I don't know where this is going, because this is true randomness. This is atmospheric noise-based randomness, not algorithmic randomness, which computers are very bad at. And Peter's going to give me the number of stories that we have yet to visit. I will plug that into random.org, and we will find out, after we give the randomizer some challenges, where are we going next? Pete, what is the number?
The number is 224.
Wow.
224 remaining Doctor Who adventures.
I know I say wow every week, but I'm like, wow, we're getting closer. Not really, but we are inching.
Just wait till they start making it again. They're making it. Just wait till it starts coming back and ticking up again every week. Okay. I'm challenging you, randomizer. Let's just get all the pirate junk out of the way. Okay, let's go ahead. Give us Curse of the Black Spot. Give us the space pirates, the pirate planet. Not that that's junk, but let's just get it out of our systems. Give us more pirates. I just want it done.
Right. Okay, I have 2 challenges. One a negative one. First of all, please don't give us anything Nazi related next time, randomizer. I'm a bit worried that you like the AI chatbots that start, talking about swastikas. This has happened before. It's well known in AI circles. You train AI chatbots on the internet, they start going a bit Nazi. Please don't do that. Don't take us to Let's Kill Hitler. I am going to be a bit worried. But do take us, please, to a Viscount banger. Because I feel like we've suffered through so many Professor Haters and Ogrons lately. It's time for our reward. Please, Mr. Randomizer, may we have a stone cold Doctor Who classic that we are just going to love talking about.
Well, there's only one episode, I would say, that probably intersects both of our requests, and I think we both know what it is. So, guys, let's spin this up and get some Douglas Adams goodness in the middle of the key to time, perhaps. Are you ready, sir, with the random element?
I am ready. Give me the countdown. I'll hit the generate button. I'll give you the number, and we'll find out where we're going next.
4, 3, 2, 1.
Allons-y.
70. We're still in Old Who.
70. We are, and it is pretty close. It nearly hit it, but it's actually the Invasion of Time.
Ooh. Okay.
All
Time
right.
Lords. It's Gallifrey. We're back.
Yeah. We go from a season beginner to a season ender.
Interesting.
So that could be the connection right there.
Excited.
Well, this is going to be good. Good Gallifrey stuff.
I'd asked for more Tom Baker a few weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
It is overloading us with Tom Baker goodness. So, yes.
It's making good on it. Making good on it. Guys, this has been great. This was The Smugglers. This was also Pull to Open. It's a podcast. And if you would like to get more of this podcast, go ahead and subscribe to this podcast, whatever podcast app you are on. Or if you're perhaps on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe there. Go ahead and turn on notifications for when we have new content. Do all the things. Follow us on social, on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook at Pull to Open 63. Also on TikTok at Pull to Open, all one word. We're going to be back again for the Invasion of Time next time. And we will see you all then.
See you on Gallifrey, guys.